Last night we had the second night of the NBA, but basically opening night for a bunch of teams outside of just the four that played on the first day. But anyway, there were so many different takeaways, and Trevor did a full-on stream that you guys should check out when you finish this, where he talked about a lot of the stuff in there. But one thing that really stood out to me as a team I am watching is the Philadelphia 76ers. And wouldn't you know it, they've got probably the greatest rookie of all time in VJ Edgecombe. I mean, look at those averages: 34 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists. Okay. All right, I had to. But in all seriousness, though, I think they've got something really special brewing in Philadelphia. They are a team that I, again, have been on the record as saying they're a really interesting team this season where, there's a couple of teams that are out of the mix in Boston and Indiana, potentially anyway. Those teams aren't just going to go away, but, maybe we're expecting them not to be in the mix for the finals and all that stuff at the end of the season. But Philadelphia is a team where they, in theory, should be looking at this season, especially with the window that they have with a guy like PG and stuff like that. And they should be looking at it and saying, hey, we need to go right now. This is our chance to sneak a win out here, right? And so they're a team I've been keeping an eye on. And obviously, this is just the very first game. There is quite a long runway to go. And there's going to be ups and downs for VJ, for Maxey, who also showed out. And there are going to be better showings, hopefully anyway, for Embiid. And we'll see PG and all that stuff. So there's going to be a lot of shifting as we go through the season. But I really wanted to talk about this because this is something we had talked about on the channel previously, Trevor and I, where there is this thing kind of brewing here in Philly. And we saw it yesterday where they got Maxey, they got Edgecombe. Shout out to the Rook from last year as well. He's not playing right now, hurt, but they got Grimes as well, playing 30 minutes a night in his place. They got something really interesting brewing. And obviously, I don't want to get ahead of myself and say, hey, they need to make some sort of drastic change and trade Embiid, trade PG. I don't know if that's drastic. They should probably do that regardless. But anyway, obviously Embiid's the guy that they built around for a while. He's been there for quite a while, all these other things. So they would give him much, much, much more leeway. And he's obviously the far better player anyway, so I digress. But I don't want to get ahead of myself and say anything sweeping like that. But is that a possibility? I'm dead serious here. Obviously, on the topic with Edgecombe, he is going to be somebody that's going to progress as his career goes on and get much, much better. I think he's got such a high floor. Firstly, he's an amazing athlete. He's got great defensive motor. He works really hard on the defensive end, and it's very visible out there, right? But he does have some things on the offensive end. Ironically, when you go back to the scouting reports coming out of college, it was shooting. That's one of the things he needs to work on, his consistency with shooting. Well, damn, he put up 5 for 13 on 3-point makes yesterday. I mean, he's not always going to do that, but that's not unachievable. That's only 38.5%. That's totally achievable. I could just spit everywhere. That's totally achievable, right? But he's, again, a great athlete, really good defensive player. He's got the tools. So I think that his floor is extremely high. So I think that obviously we're seeing Maxey as well develop right before our eyes, right? 40 points per game on the season right now. But of course, that's just, again, one game. But anyway, 40 points yesterday, 6 assists. We know what Maxey is. Hopefully they just don't burn him out. He doesn't fizzle out. But this is something that really, really kind of stood out to me yesterday. And we're going to see more games like this. Now, I don't know if they're going to combine for nearly 75 points again between the two. But Embiid was also notable in the last game because he was very noticeably the worst player they were playing. Quite literally. He couldn't move. He couldn't jump. They were calling him no knees Embiid, which is damn. That's crazy, right? He was literally there was almost no point in even having him on the court. Frankly, I'll just go out and say there was no point in having him on the court. But that's interesting, right? He's dealt with these health concerns. He said in the past last season that he is going to be somebody that's probably never really going to play back-to-backs again. So you can scratch him out for 15 games or so, give or take, maybe 14, 12, whatever, just depends on the per season. But he's also going to be a guy that's going to have ups and downs. Maybe they're going to load manage him. There's just so much kind of tied into him. And he did say coming into this season that he was going to take his time. That's something that he feels that he hasn't done enough in the past. Take his time, do what he feels is right for himself in terms of his body and getting healthy and stuff like that. But again, first game, it's really hard not to overreact, but it almost feels like his body is just betraying him, right? Over the last couple seasons, it's just been really hard for him to get out there. And so we're going to talk more about that in a moment. So I'm I was gonna do the Trevor thing, but I can't do it. He's so much better at that than me. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Ever hear the Sleeper app? Here's a little secret. It's more than just a platform for season-long fantasy leagues. This year, millions of users enjoyed playing fantasy sports on Sleeper, but the app offers so much more. Live stats, real-time updates, and visualizations on all stats. A news feed, this is so important for me. You can get lightning-fast updates on your favorite players and teams. A real-time chat to allow you to engage with other users about individual plays and performances during the NFL and NBA seasons. So download the #1 sports app today. Experience it for yourself. When you use promo code Bulletin, you get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 25 states. Check out Sleeper today. And by the way, they do have a phenomenal promo going on right now as well. Free $20 entry. Go check that out. No deposit required. $20 entry for free. Go check them out. Use the link in the description down below, and that promo code is Bulletin.
Yeah, he says, wait 1 minute or something like that. He's so good at that. Anyway, so we're going to talk about the contract situation in Philadelphia, and then again, just highlight Embiid over the last couple of years. Since we're being dramatic with the 1 point per game, or with the 1 game averages, he's now averaging 4 points per game on the season. Okay, did that joke get stale? It did. All right, moving on. So look at this last couple of years stretch for Joel. I mean, he is in a position where he's played literally 60 games. Sheesh. Over 3 seasons. So obviously this season just started, but over the last couple seasons, we'll just erase the last game. He's played basically 60 games over the last 2 seasons. That's crazy, right? 60 out of 160 something games. That's crazy, right? So he played 19 games last season. He had some ups and downs with that, obviously, but really you could tell that he really struggled because the field goal attempts were down. The percentages were down by a bunch, from 52 to 44. 3-point percentage was down. Everything was down pretty much across the board for him, aside from the free throw shooting overall. And some of that's just, again, less minutes also, because that's also down 30 as opposed to 33 plus. But if you look at Joel over the last couple of seasons prior to that, he really also extended himself. He played career highs, 66, 68 games. This is a guy that, for the record, has never even played 70 games in his career. He also missed the first 2 years of his career to injury. Man, we've got like a 5-year peak with Embiid right here from like 25 to right about maybe 24 and a half to like right about 29, where he's just so good, constantly in the MVP, making all-star teams, in DPOY running, like all these different accolades here. But I have to wonder if we haven't just, because of the health over the last couple seasons, like is this a trend? Is he going to keep this going? How does this season look? Is he going to play another 30, 40 game season? Like that's tricky. Now, the good news is there is a little bit of a blessing here. If by chance they're able to pace him and get him healthy to the playoffs, that is a huge stretch. And for the record, Paul George, you are absolutely not getting away from any strays in this video. A lot of what I'm saying applies to PG too, except I'm also worried because, PG's older and stuff like that. But anyway, if they can get him healthy to the playoffs, there's that. And also another thing too is you make it through the season, putting the ball in the hands of your young guys. That's just going to further their development and get them more ready for that situation. Again, you run the risk of, just like last year, where you overtax a player like a Maxey. There's more depth there now, but they need McCain back. But anyway, like you run that risk, but I think that's an interesting dilemma that they're in, where it's like you have the opportunity to develop your guys more. So we'll see what happens with that. But anyway, moving on from that, I wanted to talk about the salaries, because this is something that I'm constantly also looking at. I just gave you the context of the way Embiid performed. I gave you the context of how the last couple of seasons have looked. And now I'll finally mix in the last piece, which is the context of how the books look. Okay, so Embiid has $55 million on the books this year. He has $58 million on the books next year. He's got $62 million on the books for 27-28. And then he wraps up this contract with a $67 million player option in 2028-2029. For the record, PG is on a very similar contract. It just ends 1 year sooner. I will go out on a limb that I've been out on before on the channel and say I think these are the two worst contracts, and I don't think it's close in the entire NBA. Now, obviously, the caveat to that is, I mean, frankly, I don't think PG will ever really be worth that anymore. He's just, it's not that I hate him. He's just old, right? He's getting older. I think his skill set ages well, but I can't see him being more than like an 18 point per game guy. And at that point, unless he's really impactful on defense, etc., the only other guy that's making that amount of money, probably, especially in that age range, is maybe Jimmy. And you could argue whether or not Jimmy is overpaid as well. So anyway, there's a higher ceiling with Embiid because, again, we've seen him. He was an MVP a couple seasons ago. Like, we know what he can do. It's just more or less, is that still in there, right? But I do think these two guys have the worst contracts in the league. So as a result, unless you are attaching a bunch of assets and probably a young player to them, these guys also wind up being, in my opinion, largely untradeable. Now, the cool thing about the Sixers books, as I look at it here, is, yeah, they've paid Maxey. They've got him on a $40 million deal, which frankly could wind up being underpaid. He's peaking at 46. That, if he turns into what it looks like he'll be, he could be underpaid because he's got guys that are close to him in salary that are going to be making mid-30s that are not the quality of player he is. So that could be an underpay. Edgecombe, obviously, just starting, so he's fine. But who knows what happens with Grimes. But the rest of their books, aside from PG, Embiid, and Maxey, is all mostly clear. Now, it's a good thing PG comes off the books a year sooner, right? He's going to obviously pick up that $56 million player option. Who the hell were you bidding against when you gave him a $56 million player option in 27-28 when he'll be freaking 38 years old, man? Coming off of injuries anyway in the Clippers. I guess I do hate him a little bit. Anyway, so they have that, but they've just got so much money tied into those top three guys. So there's not a lot of wiggle room anyway. So ideally they get off of somebody and then they can pivot. But there's a potential there, if they do something like that, to be able to potentially shift into this next younger phase, because they've got, and we mentioned this last time, a fun little team brewing underneath. Like, I also like Edwards, Bona. Those guys are 21, 22. McCain, again, 21. Like, they've got this, and Edgecombe, Maxey, they're 20 and 24. They've got this fun younger team brewing underneath. So I do think, back to the beginning, the time is now for the Sixers. I think they need to accomplish it specifically this year. They obviously, the good thing is with this is, as Embiid declines, as PG declines, you would like to see the younger guys I was just mentioning ascend, and that can bridge the gap, right? So all of a sudden, Embiid is more of a 20-point per game guy, playing 28 minutes. But okay, well, you can rely on Edgecombe for 20 points. You can rely on Maxey for 27 points. Like, so that can be something that over the course of the next couple of seasons could potentially happen, which would extend your runway, of course, especially if you get Embiid a solid backup and then you are able to manage him more. He maybe plays 50 games, 55 games for you, which is pretty good given how, for his career, he's, again, never even played 70 games. He's typically probably around that range anyway, about 50 games on average. So, you know, I think that's something there where you could potentially have that happen. But otherwise, I think that the time is now, barring, you know, that specific scenario where they decline, others ascend, et cetera, and can bridge the gap. So we'll see what happens ultimately with the Sixers. Let me know what you guys think. Again, don't want to jump the gun. Embiid could show up the next game and have a 45-point game for all we know. I don't know. I don't think he will, because he looked really bad. He looked immobile. So I don't think he will, but hey, he could. So anyway, hopefully you enjoyed. And if you want to see that stream that Trevor did, make sure you check it out. It's on the screen right now.